Welcome to Australian Survivor Archives, the only podcast going over the complete history of Australian Survivor from Whalers Way right through to the current day. We are so excited for today's episode. Back in Season 1, we did a Season 1 reunion for our Whalers Way cast. It was a lot of fun, it was exciting, and it was a trip down memory lane for everybody involved in that season. This one today is a little bit more exciting. We're back for another reunion, a cast reunion, to talk about a season that never had a reunion. Season 2, Celebrity Survivor from 2006, never ever had any form of reunion. And today we are so excited to be able to bring back a third of the cast and the EP to talk about that little season that many people don't even remember back from 2006. We do here on the show. We're celebrating it, and we're here to find out a bunch of stories and celebrate it even more. My name is Ben Waterworth, and as always, I'm going to throw over to my esteemed colleague, a man who, as we've just discovered, is looking fresh and prim and nice, ready to go back on Survivor again. Maybe there's a secret he needs to tell us, but I'm excited to be joined by him once again on this show.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, guys. Matt Dyson, as always. And you're right, Ben. Like this for me is my favourite time of the season when we get to do these reunions. We did one last year, as you said, and but this season they didn't get one. So to manage to get a few, we haven't got them all today, but to get a few back, and a lot of these people haven't seen each other for 15 years or spoken to, maybe a bit of social media stuff, but to actually see each other here on the camera is something special. And we get to reminisce and hopefully hear some extra stories that we didn't hear when we interviewed them. I mean, it's great, Ben, to be able to get all these people on during the season, interview them, hear their stories, but to have them all together, that's what really makes this season, and it's a good way to finish it off. I agree with you completely, and to give them all this opportunity now, I mean, 15 years in the making, essentially, to have some form of reunion. But we're going to go around the room right now. Obviously, we've got our listeners listening on the audio one, we've got our viewers watching the video one right now, so we'll do the introductions here to bring on everybody, and we'll do it in order from when they were voted out right through to the end, and then we'll also bring in their fearless leader, who is, of course, on the line with us as well. We have two original MOSO members, including the one, the only, Miss Amber Petty, who is on the line with us right now. First of all, Amber, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you back here today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for reminding me what team I was on. I can't remember.
Do you remember these people on the line right now? Do it.
Vanuatu.
You were on Survivor, Amber, just to let you know. This is what you're here for today. Also, another original MOSO
Amber just has
member.
an issue in that her life is such an intermix of reality and not reality, and so it's very difficult for her to often equate the space that she's in at any one time.
You weren't meant to talk, Dave. You weren't meant to talk, mate. No one knows you're here yet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's an invisible person. The audio listeners don't know what's going on right now. Another original MOSO member, technically not the next person voted out if we're talking about who was voted out, but I'm going to bring him up into the line while we're talking MOSO right now. It is the runner-up of this season, even though he was voted out. We're going to get to that eventually. It's the one, the only Mr. Justin Melby. Justin, welcome back. We just had you on a couple of weeks ago, so it's good to have you on again.
Good. Yeah, great to be back. Great to see some familiar faces after 15 years.
I'm glad you recognise them, unlike Amber, so we're off to a good start. Also joining us, two original Kakula members, including the man with so many nicknames, I don't have time to go through them all today. The one, the only, the Puppet Master, there's one of them, Mr. David Oldfield. You can talk now, David. Welcome back to Australian Survivor Archives.
I'm not sure I want to talk now after you've given me that intro, and after I find that my words of love towards Amber weren't appropriately received at a timing point where people would understand I was even here. But thanks for having me, and it is good to see everybody. I have had some contact with Guy over the years here and there, and we saw each other a couple of times there fairly soon following Survivor, but we've been in contact here and there. Amber I've been aware of course. Justin, I wasn't sure. I thought Justin was probably in America up until I found out from you guys recently that he's here in Australia.
Yeah.
Of course, David, I always wondered what happened to David. And David doesn't really even look like, I'm not quite sure. Is it the glasses that's different? There's something really different about you. You don't look any older or anything along those lines. You just look different in some way. I wouldn't have known you if I'd passed you in the street. But yes, pleasure to be here once again. Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you also for spoiling the other last two people there, Dave. You really doing well on the show. Oh, come on. Jesus Christ. Joining us also, original Kakula member, the winner. We had him on last week, the one, the only Mr. Guy Leach. Guy, welcome back to Australian Survivor.
Hello.
Guys.
Thank you. And I haven't spoken. I've spoken to Amber in the last 15 years once, maybe, I think, from memory, Amber.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think I've spoken to David Mason. Obviously, David Oldfield many times. We live not far from each other, only 15, 20 minutes away. And Justin and I used to play a bit of golf together here and there, and we'd go to the Jack Newton golf event preceding the Survivor. So we've mixed a little bit together as well. Yeah.
Who's better at golf, Guy?
Guy. I'll let Justin tell you.
Guy. Way better.
Because I'm modest.
No hesitation needed. And also joining us, he was our very first interview that we did at the very beginning of this season. The man behind the cameras, he put it all together, the boss, the leader, whatever you want to call him, Mr. David Mason, direct from a boat in New Zealand. So good to see you've gone out for the location award right now, David. But welcome back to Australian Survivor Archives.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I've literally yesterday just finished a sail from Sydney to New Zealand, where I now live. So I'm now in isolation at a quarantine dock in northern New Zealand. We've got to wait a few days here, and then we're free to go, hopefully.
Wow.
Better quarantine dock than execution dock, I've always said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good way of putting it. I want to start off just by going around the room and sort of asking you all what it's been like to go over these memories, because many of you have all said in our interviews that this is something that doesn't really come up often. It was sort of something you did obviously 15 years ago, and kind of you've done many of other things in between then. But I'll start with you, Mr. Mason. Kind of what's it been like with everything that you've done since Survivor to be able to have these two random idiots doing a stupid podcast who have wanted to contact you to talk about it once again?
It did two things to me. One, it brought back so many memories, obviously, about everything we did. But more than that, I remain truly gobsmacked that you guys know so much about the show. You know more than I've ever forgotten about the show and what happened, who did what to whom and why, and what happened when I've got absolutely no memory of all of that. So all those memories come flooding back, and then I try and piece the bits together about what we did and why and how we got away with it.
Which I just think it just shows we have no life, but thanks for the compliment. It's kind of, it kind of works. And I will say to you, let's get this out of the way now. The whole green turd situation with Dicko's toilet, I think Amber owned up to that. So,
I mentioned no names. I mentioned no names. I just said someone.
No, you didn't. But I think you only didn't mention names because you didn't remember whose name it was.
I thought it might have been you, but I was not game to go there.
No, well, bless you.
Yes.
Sorry, but hang on, Ben. Since we last spoke, has the turd turned green?
I think it was always green. Probably if it's still in the toilet in Vanuatu, I'm sure it's very green by now. But,
that's what Dicko told me.
It would be green by now, yes.
Yeah.
It was green at the time.
But then I think it was Guy. You then said it might have been you as well. Like I think everyone had a green turd at one point.
I think you said it was maybe.
I reckon Guy probably put the idea into Amber's head, and then Amber did it.
No, it was definitely mine. I don't know. I think saying I'm happy to own up to it might be going a little too far.
It's the fact that he had to get a branch to try and get it down the U-bend. That's the thing that sticks in my mind.
Well, yeah, I actually don't. Anyway, he named me as having done that. I actually obviously don't remember. It's not something that I would do consciously.
Did it make the book?
I'll leave that to Dicko. I'm too busy to flush that toilet. But anyway, if that's what happened, well, that's what happened.
Certainly memorable.
We've got to get past this green turd, because ever since you mentioned it, I've had this image of Bob Brown in my head, and I really want to get that out of my head if we can. So let's move away from the green turd, which I've never heard of before. I wasn't aware of the green turd.
Oh, me neither.
Apart from Bob.
While we're on the topic of Dicko, obviously, unfortunately, he's not here today, but maybe, we should start talking about him first before we actually get into the show.
I hang out with Dicko a lot after the show. He actually joined my program in losing weight, believe it or not. So I was training Casey Donovan at the time, Jonathan Coleman, and I started working with Dicko to lose some weight. He had a real love for drinking wine at night, which didn't help. It made the papers that he was doing that with me. And then Jenny Craig came out with a male product and signed him up to about $100,000 to go and be an ambassador for Jenny Craig losing weight, and he flicked me. That was, that was it.
The thing I find most disturbing about that guy is that I would have thought, you know, I have an eminent level of respect for your capacities, most particularly in a physical sense. And if we look back on it, I'm not aware of Casey Donovan losing any weight. Jonathan Coleman died, and Dicko still drinks as much as he ever did. So these are not success stories you're giving us here.
Well, not if it's coming from your mouth, not so much, no. Not so much.
One thing actually,
he's not worrying about cancel culture in any way.
No, we'll tick off the bingos there for David controversial things. One thing I want to quickly ask actually to David Mason. I don't know if we brought this up on the interview, but was there any other potential host besides Dicko, or was it always Dicko and that's it, or were there some other shortlisted people that nearly made the host of the season?
Dicko was who the network wanted. They pinched him off Idol, had him floating around the network, needing a gig, and this seemed like the ideal thing. To be honest, I mean, Dicko was great. But he was never my pick. He didn't seem like the kind of guy that would be surviving out there on an island on his own, which you kind of need in a host. You need to feel that they can do it. The challenges and everything else, they could do it. Now you guys go and do it. Never had a moment thought that Dicko would be able to do any of the challenges.
It helped someone like me watching it. Like, it helped someone who looked like me going, oh, well, if Dicko can, I can.
Yeah.
So, you know, like...
I thought Dicko got fatter as the show went on.
Yeah, exactly. But what he did do very well, which turned out to be useful, was handle all of our cast who needed quite a lot of handling.
Yeah.
And he did it with humour and a certain amount of firmness, which we needed.
Just on what you said not your first choice. Did you have it? Like, if you could have had a say, was there like a Channel 7 star that you would have liked?
To be honest, I absolutely can't remember going back who was on my radar. To be honest, we were so quick in pre-production, to be honest. It was a matter of 6 weeks, I think, in pre-production, that we just had to sign people up who were available. And he was available and part of the network. So there weren't really any choices at the time.
I'm just saying right now, Grant Bowler would have been perfect. I mean, the mole, like, come on, you're the mole man. Like, you know, Grant Bowler would have been iconic for that show.
But he's so, at that time, he was so associated with the mole, I think the audience would end up being confused.
Yeah, well...
Surely Guy could have got one of his Iron Man buddies step in. I'm sure they're...
Grant Kenny nearly hosted Whalers Way, so I mean, he missed out to Lincoln, could have come back for Vanuatu, so that could have worked. It's interesting because obviously I know kind of outside of the show we've talked a bit about working with Dicko. Amber, I just refresh our memory in terms of like your interactions. Do you ever have much to do with Dicko sort of working in the media? Like, did you kind of do many interviews with him afterwards or have any association with Dicko after Survivor?
I think I met Dicko a few times because my history had been working in the music industry, and obviously that was his original space. And then I think I can't really remember, but I did have some kind. Obviously, I knew who he was, but I'd obviously had some kind of slight personal dealings with him through music or whatever it was. But I do, there's things that I don't remember, but there's things I do remember. And it was funny because it was an interesting time, I think, in Dicko's career. And, he was obviously very, very popular. But I do remember him being very humble and enthusiastic about getting the gig as the host of Survivor. And I saw probably the nicest side of Dicko that I've ever experienced during his time, doing that gig. And look, what I liked about him at the time was he was someone that just, he did struggle with, a few addictions and stuff like that. And I think that I found him very sort of authentic and real. And, turd story aside, I mean, he did send me flowers. He sent me flowers to apologise because I was working on radio and it got back to me and I just thought it was like, I'm not much of a sort of poo and fart and, you know, I don't find that sort of humour and that sort of storytelling terribly interesting or very clever. So I was a bit sort of shocked. And as a female, I was like, really? Wow, that's pretty low budget. That as a story, you know, line on radio, even, you know, you're always struggling to tell stories. But I thought that was pretty low budget. But I do remember that I saw him at a music, it must have been an Idol thing after that. And, you know, regardless of that, and I'd accepted his apology, but he was very, I saw him at this event and he was very sort of, you know, suddenly too good for you. I just thought it was very strange and I thought it was a real shame. I liked his vulnerability during our experience, but each to their own.
I'd love to know, like, Justin, you still see Dicko at least once a year. You play golf with him.
No,
So do you talk much about Survivor when you catch up with him each year?
I see Dicko up when Guy and I do the Jack, the golf event. I got Dicko an invite to do. He loves golf, and he would come up to the Jack and get involved, and he was lovely. I always have a beer with him up at the Jack. I wouldn't see him outside that, but he was very, you know, I used to watch him on Australian Idol. So yeah, he was like Adam said, he's quite popular, and I thought he was quite serious.
He's coming back Idol next year, isn't
crazy
it?
and hard, like you know. But it was great.
He had a 5-year period, didn't he, where he was on everyone's lips, and he was the talking point around the country, wasn't he, with all the gossip and this and that. And he had his run, which was sort of during Survivor and sort of previous to that, and a couple of years after. And then it's not like, I don't think he probably made a couple of choices with things that he did that didn't work out, and he sort of ran his race, didn't he? So,
Holy moly, one of those probably.
Yeah, just sort of made wrong. Like he jumped into everything, didn't he? And like I thought with Survivor, when I heard he was a host, I thought, what? That doesn't make sense. Like he's not why some pommy bloke that's sloppy looking hosting a show where you're meant to tough it out. So I didn't get it, but I thought he did a good job. I thought his personality sort of carried through, and he's quite a clever, intelligent sort of bloke. And yeah, like Dave Mason said, he handled everyone really well. You know, it's that sort of celebrity, I suppose, talking to another celebrity, sort of did that well. And I mean, I must say with Dicko, he was really good for me because, I mean, my kids went to Idol and were in the audience and went backstage and met everyone when they were young, and we played golf together. So we became quite close for a while, him and I. We'd probably chat every second day, and I'd go around to his house and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, and it's a shame I don't see him anymore. Yeah.
Just two quick things. David Oldfield, you obviously went on to First Contact with him. We talked a little bit about that in your interview. But, I mean, we love the dynamic watching the season when Dicko just seems to always, like, take the piss out of you. But, I mean, was that something that kind of, when the cameras were off, when you're not filming for First Contact, you were able to kind of keep that sort of relationship up with Dicko? Was it sort of a different thing, different style of show that you were doing when you were doing First Contact at that point?
Yeah, look, it was a different kind of show. I thought that Dicko I thought Dicko was quite humorous, and I enjoyed interactions with Dicko when we're doing Survivor. I've never found Dicko, I think Dicko's accent and voice generally doesn't lend itself well to narration or radio or anything along those lines. So I've always had a general issue with his persona in the media. But I really don't know what to say about Dicko. It's funny, I kind of like Dicko. Dicko gets to me in a sense of, as a dear old friend, sadly, who's dead, as so many of my old friends are, said, you know, he would have said of Dicko that Dicko was a hail fellow well met. So, I mean, Dicko is a sort of guy that, you know, you can sit down and you can have an enjoyable, you know, beer with. And Dicko, you know, probably enjoys beer more than anybody does. And so you can have a really sort of nice time sitting down and having a good chat with Dicko and all that sort of stuff. But I find Dicko an enormous hypocrite, and hypocrisy is something that really grates on me, you know, very, very severely. And I had that opportunity of going, you know, through a month with him with first contact. And, there were levels of enjoyment also where that's concerned. So Dicko is one of those people who's hard to dislike, I think, in the sense of from a social point of view. But there are other elements in a seriousness in his personality that I really can't terribly much get past. But at the same time, even as I'm saying this, I find him a happy-go-lucky sort of person who, as I say, is nice to have a drink with.
He's somebody that I think, I know I'm speaking this way, Matt, as in Matt Dyke. Well, there's only one Matt on this show, Ben. What am I talking about? There's two Davers. I'm thinking there's two of everyone. But I know I've always grown an appreciation for Dicko every time I've watched it. First time I watched it, I was like, okay, yeah, Dicko's fine. But Matt, you and I have had a lot of fun talking about Dicko. We've done the whole thug life thing, obviously, which is a bit of fun on social media, kind of some of his fun one-liners. And the greatest thing, which I know, David Mason, we talked to you about in your interview, was to play hard, play safe, and play to win. Like, it adds a nice little unique element to it. So, yeah, Matt, I don't know if you've got much to sort of say on Dicko at this point while we're talking about him.
No, I think David Mason nailed it on the head. Like, they had 6 weeks in pre-production, which I think is amazing. We've spoken all through the season about what an incredible job David Mason did to have such little time to get this together. Yes, if they had more time, they probably would have gone for someone else. But at the time, I think we learned he'd just come to Channel 7. They paid big money for him. They needed him to do something. Of course, there was a hosting gig, so he's done it. I think he did the job. And at the end of the day, that's all you want. Professional, you want someone who's going to do the job. Could have there been someone better? Probably. Did he do the job? Yes. So you can't really ask much more of him than that.
One thing I'd like to talk about, because Amber, you've obviously got to go fairly soon, so I'd like to kind of jump into just the tribe split we've got here. We've got 2 original Mosos, 2 original Kukula. So let's start with original Moso, yourself and Justin. Take us back to those early moments on the beach. And, of course, Justin was a late addition. Now, we've spoken to you a couple of times, Amber, here over on the Oz Network, and we had some fun chats about Justin and his soap star status. He's on the line right now. Give us some thoughts, initial memories of first meeting Justin and kind of those early days on Moso.
I loved Justin, to be honest. And all of this shit aside, I'm sure I would still love Justin because I believe what I did love in Justin was very, very real, of course. Look, to be honest, and it wasn't just Justin, there was a few people on our team that I think I was just really, I was the least celebrity. I had the least knowledge of the entertainment industry. I'd worked sort of more facilitating other people's careers than I did in terms of me being so-called talent or reigniting a career, as some people kind of often said that was what people were doing. So there was a lot of things that was only upon reflection that I realised how naive I was and probably almost a bit stupid in that maybe I should have been trying a bit harder and stuff like that. So I was definitely in a place where I really I was playing the game very face value, almost as if we were in the real world being friends. So there was this sort of stupid side of me that felt that I got played by Justin because I really did like him. And he was a very necessary element, I think, having him. He was the perfect male, no disrespect to the other males, but he was the perfect male for us girls because I do think he genuinely really understood us. Of course, I'm sure he was playing us as well, but I do think he genuinely really was. I would imagine in your real life, Justin, you probably have female friends and you probably are a great friend in that sense. I did feel probably only because it was really only Imogen, Nicole and Justin that I felt I got really close to because I didn't really spend much time with the other people. And then I guess a couple of the other girls on our team I didn't necessarily bond with. Who was it? Fiona Horn and who else was there? I can't even remember.
Kim Johnson.
Yeah. But she was gone in 5 seconds. But, so anyway, so yes, I was, you try and remind yourself you're playing a game, but there's still part of you that's a bit hurt when I genuinely, this naive person went, Justin scored, he's really my buddy. And then he, stabbed me. But
I was going to say, Justin got your revenge when you voted out Fiona and kind of went against that. And then, Justin, you got prompt revenge straight away. There, bye-bye, Amber.
That was revenge. Was that revenge, Justin, that you were doing that because I voted Fiona out. I couldn't deal with the Fiona energy anymore.
Yeah, no, I know. If we play the game, I think I will say this to Ben. If we play the game in terms of our tribe, when I come back to think of it, if we had kept Fiona, we were playing the numbers. But the personal side of you dealing with Fiona, you just had enough. And I get it. But that wasn't the game.
Do you know, the thing is too, Justin, I think that the thing is, I mean, yes, she was a bit more precious and, you know, who wants to be talking about bloody fruit flies at 5 a.m. and you haven't eaten, you know, you bloody haven't accepted. I mean, seriously, you know, there's, you know, I mean.
Right, she was on your side, not mine.
I could be in a 5-star hotel and room service could arrive with my favourite food and still, you know, if he's trying to talk about fruit flies, still not interested. But I think the thing was too that there was, you know, and everyone's got a lot of stuff going on in their own private lives that they bring to any given moment. And for me at that time, I was really in a world of pain. I'd just come out of a very brutal relationship with a horrible human. And so betrayal and all of that stuff was really, really rife and really raw with me. And I also had felt very ridiculed and I felt very embarrassed about a lot of the things that had come out in the press because of my relationship with this vile human. And so even just something as small as Fiona choosing me to want to go down the bloody lagoon and do the topless, you know, oh, let's just have a little swim and a little topless, whatever. Not only is that so not my bag, but it actually really riled me because I thought, you've chosen me because you think I'm the biggest dickhead here. And that offended me on a deeper level than anyone really understood. And probably I didn't fully articulate that to myself, but I felt I was hiding a lot of wounds at the time. And so it was just something like that too, that I just thought that sort of self-promotion and also that sexualized, you know, that I thought was very off. It's not what I'm about, but also I felt that she chose me as the most stupid. And I thought, well, fuck you.
Wow. Do you think that was a tactic of hers or?
I don't think she thought about it that much. You know, it definitely wasn't like something she's like, right, who can I get and who's going to get their boobs out and how are we going to get on the commercials and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that she, you know, the cogs were always going. She was playing the game. She wanted to get something out of it, including reigniting a career. And as I said, a lot of those things that a lot of others people were doing. But I do think she strategically chose me as the most naive that might just follow her along like a little lapdog. And, you know, as naive and as vulnerable as I might have been in that moment, I was never an idiot.
Well, it gave us one of the best reactions of the entire season when you just sat there really awkwardly while she was bathing herself topless. So, I mean, we got at least a good screen grab of that.
I'm grateful for that moment because that was just gold, really.
She was a good choice as a person on the show because she was always going to piss someone off, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was a great choice by David Mason and the team to get on because she was never going to last long because she was get voted out based on her personality. But before she went, she was going to cause drama. Yeah.
Did David, I mean, it's interesting you say that, Guy. I can certainly see that in Fiona and I can imagine people would see that in me potentially as well. But I'm wondering, David, firstly, I've got to say, Amber, I have this vision which will always be in my head of your desperation as you sort of wandered head down around a smoke-filled, desolate campsite, uttering the words which will live in history. I get this right. What's a girl got to do to get something to eat around here? As you clutched your belly like a kid with berry. It was really quite...
Channel 7 loved showing that on the promos, didn't they?
It was fantastic. But
it was so pathetic, wasn't it? Like I was like,
what do I have to do to get some food?
You didn't have to show your
tits. Of course, you can imagine I was thinking what you had to do. I'm sure you didn't. But what I wanted to ask David was in that where, like Guy said, in your choice of cast and all that, and picking Fiona because you knew she was going to rankle people, did you really know people well enough to make those sorts of judgments in the initial casting?
No, we didn't know people well enough by any means, but we wanted a mix of people that the audience would fall in love with and want to come back each week to see because they enjoy seeing them on camera. And we wanted some thorns in there just to rankle people and just stir it up and just make stuff interesting. The last thing we wanted is a love fest. Actually, a love fest would have worked quite well, actually. If I
That's a different show, man. That's Love Island.
But we didn't want a bunch of people there hanging out on a tropical island. We needed some stirrers. And David, you were one of them. Fiona was another. And you performed beautifully in stirring the pot and just creating shit for people.
And a few off behind the camera too, which we'll get to. Don't worry, we've learned a few stories in the last few weeks, which we're going to address at one point. But it's fascinating with Moso. You know, we talked a lot sort of about a lot of people wanting to leave. Obviously, Justin, we addressed that with you. You confirmed all the sort of the bribery stuff. You got to the bottom of that sort of stuff with it. But like, do you look at kind of those early days, particularly with someone like Imogen, who so probably should have been the first voted out, as we've talked a lot about. Kim goes. Imogen goes on to be the last woman standing in the entire game, the only person who got voted out without making it to the final three, without having previously been voted out. I mean, Justin, like, just does that surprise you? Like, do you think back to those early days with Imogen and think, wow, how on earth would have she gotten to the end at that point? Or does knowing Imogen a little bit...
I think after that challenge where she couldn't do the water challenges, she wasn't doing too well at. And Guy was just killing it. Besides the other team were just killing it. They had all the guys. I think at that stage I wasn't sure. I think we just copped it like someone mentioned before. It's like a bit like a love fest when we all landed. It was all we're on the island, we're all getting along, speaking. Somehow we forgot that it's actually at some stage we have to play this game and just get along like good mates. I mean, it's a game. And I think, we started thinking about the game after we had these first challenges, and we started getting hungry and food was on the line and immunity and all these things that come with the game, we started being on the line. And I did not expect, if it wasn't for the storm and Kim and everyone wanting to go, I thought Imogen may have gone, only for not doing well in the first few challenges. But as soon as we hit that thunderstorm and when it got really miserable and people on the tribe were kind of weighing up like, what the F am I doing here? Like, do I really need this? And Imogen's, she was like, I can stick this out. I might be good at the challenge, but I can stick this out, hang out for a while. Whether how long I was in there to play. I wasn't there to try and go all the way, man. It was this, money.
Which I love. This is the great thing about having you and Amber here is that you two gave some of the most honest interviews in the fact that Justin, like as you kept saying in your interview, I was there for the money. That's all I was there for. Yeah. And Amber, you basically was like you said, like, why was I doing it? I would never do it again. Like, I barely remember doing it.
I think I said, I put it in my book. I said actually what I was doing it for, as super cliched as this sounds, was I was really trying to find my inner hero because I had been really destroyed spiritually, mentally, everything, in my personal life that had ended up in lots of the papers, and I just felt horrific. And I really, really, I hate Survivor. Like, I hate it. You couldn't pay me to watch an episode of Survivor. So when I was offered to do it, I'm like, are you joking? Like, oh my God, like there is just nothing I'd want to do less. But I really saw the opportunity as being, shit, if I can survive even one day on that awful, awful show, I'm going to get back some of the self-esteem and my little inner hero, and I really, really needed it. So I was having my own relationship, and everyone else was doing it for money or for, a bit of a fame boost. And so,
did it work for you though? Like what you were just saying? Did you leave Vanuatu with that sense of feeling?
Yeah. like, I can't even begin to tell you. So I thank everybody and, you know, for that. And I'm very proud that I was on that show, even though I don't tell a lot of people. I just didn't like that celebrity word in front of it. So you know, there's friends of mine that I've been friends with for 10 years that wouldn't know until I like maybe posted something that you and Matt did that didn't even know that I'd ever done the show. But yes, I 100% did. I got off that show. And, you know, Dicko, as much as I think I really understand what you're saying, David, about Dicko, I think Dicko is sort of split between authentic Dicko, which is a big heart, very open, you know, full of flaws, but very loving. And then he's firmly in ego. And I've seen him in ego and he vacillates between the two. And I don't like the ego version of him, but I adore the authentic one of him. But he was really beautiful, like, you know, not to go back to the turd story, but he was so beautiful. He was literally ready to just give me a hug the minute I was sort of off. And he just sat down really authentically and said, let me tell you how you came across to me and some of the crew. And he took me out to this beautiful restaurant. He bought me a bottle of wine. I was gagging for a ciggy. He bought me cigarettes. Like, he was really gorgeous. He helped really fan my, you know, my sense of, wow, I feel really good about myself, you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
And you should be thanking Anna Kournikova, because if she ended up being a part of this, you wouldn't be sitting here right now.
I know.
Anna Kournikova was going to be on the show
instead of Amber.
See, I don't like where this is going, because David, it doesn't matter whether it's 15 years later, he'll still go, shit, and we got Amber?
No. I told you I was thinking about switching to you. Goodness gracious me. Anna Kournikova was going to be. I don't know. I'm finding out all these things I had no idea about.
Good to see you're a good listener of Australian Survivor Archives, David. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Just quickly.
My dad said, when I told him the Anna Kournikova story, I said, because I got flicked for her and then I got brought back on because she didn't get on the plane or something. And my dad said, oh, baby girl, you know I love you, but I'd flick you for Anna Kournikova.
I'll say one thing, Amber. You'd probably play tennis better than her, so let's be honest. Amber, you've got to head off in just a moment. 2 quick questions for you before you leave. Obviously, on New Moso, you did play with Mr. Oldfield. Any quick memories of Mr. David Oldfield, meeting him for the first time, or any fun stories from out there in Vanuatu that you want to share with us today?
Look, I have to say, my strongest memory, it's really strange because, I was sort of, you know, in my own head. So there's probably lots of memories that I don't remember. But I do remember it was a particularly sad night when David, Elton, Justin and I were spooning on wet sand, and the boys were just being typical boys, like, you know, doing fart jokes and Christ knows what else. And I was just lying there, I think like second from the back going, oh, yeah, where's your fucking inner hero now, darling? I was so miserable. But, I mean, what could you do? They were having fun. Boys will
David, do you remember that, David? Do you remember that night?
Oh, look, I don't especially remember spooning Amber. I remember spooning Justin, of course.
I don't
especially...
the backer or the front.
But I certainly remember the rainy nights, and the rain was. I mean, only yesterday. You know, I often refer to some of the things that Survivor got me used to, and only yesterday I had someone here. It's been pouring with rain in Sydney. It really pours up where we are. It's like a little microclimate of its own, and the people that were here to sort of look around sort of said to me, "Oh, do you want an umbrella?" I said, "No, I did Survivor. I'm used to being wet." So yeah, even today, you know, things like, or these days, things like that come back to me, and certainly what Amber is saying about the privations at those stages. I mean, I remember sleeping with my feet in a basket, or trying to sleep with my feet in a basket to keep my feet dry. But it was all a phenomenal experience, and I was well and truly used to being in the jungle, so it wasn't all that surprising to me. But you can't get away from, you know, just being wet. I mean, we were wet for about 3 days, weren't we, Amber?
Way longer. It was particularly wet then, but it was also wet at the very beginning, because I remember there was this, you know, it was probably, no one, I shouldn't say just Justin, but I think it was Justin, Fiona Horn. Anyway, they tried to make, and I'm pretty sure I did nothing. But, they tried to make this sort of covered canopy with the, the leaves and whatever. But, of course, the minute it started raining, we might as well have just jumped in the ocean. But it was wet. And then I remember someone saying, oh, apparently it's like the wettest and coldest winter they've had, in 40 years. And I was like, what sort of dickhead decided to bring us to Vanuatu in winter?
Well, that's David Mason.
Hi, David. How you doing?
Hi. Yep. I put my hand up. No. We went to Vanuatu because the Americans had been there, and we knew that was going to be a quick and easy place to set up Survivor. So that's all it was. That's the level of thinking that went behind the location.
First ever international Australian Survivor, of course. So you created history. Amber, just before... Go, Amber.
I just want to ask a quick question of David Mason, because this is one thing that firmly imprinted itself in my head, is the snake issue, right? So in the contracts and everything, it had said, make sure you wear sneakers at all time, right? But it didn't say, because you might get bitten in the toes and you might be dead in 40 minutes, right? Like, it didn't say that, right? Not that I read, but I am a bit of a skim reader anyway. And I thought, so the minute I got to the island, I thought, oh my God, I'm not wearing it's wet. I'm not wearing bloody runners and getting tinnier in this, life's bad enough as it is. But it was only till I was standing on this bloody rock and Justin was out there trying to find, the one fish in the ocean. And I was standing sort of waiting for him on this rock, and this bloody really bright blue, yellow and black snake wiggled past and then literally stopped and came. And I wrote this in my book too, that it literally launched itself. I mean, it was so tiny but very bright. And it launched itself out, and I was standing there going, oh my God, I was literally shitting myself. I'm like, all I know is that it's very bright colours, and that's not a good sign. And then I realised later that it was the same colours as our Survivor gear, and I thought, shit, it thinks that I'm its mummy. I was literally like, oh my God, it thinks I'm its mummy. Shit, just go away and find, Anyway, when this thing finally went off, and I ran onto the shore. And Fiona said, oh, that's the such and such a snake or something. And, apparently you could be dead in 40 minutes. So if I hadn't have had, because I didn't have sneakers on when I met my little mate, if that had bitten me, couldn't I have come to you and said...
No, a few little cross stories there. There is one type of snake. It is a sea snake. It's black and white stripes. And it has an ability.
This is blue and yellow.
And it has tiny, tiny fangs, and it can only get through the faintest of skin. It typically goes through that skin on your thumb and hand. That's where it can bite and actually get through.
The toe area.
The shoe thing was all about coral cuts.
Coral, yeah.
So coral cuts which get infected, and now then turns nasty and ugly. So it wasn't about snakes with shoes. It was about coral cuts.
Gotcha.
And the other thing, Amber, about sea snakes is sea snakes have a very inefficient venom delivery system. They secrete venom. They don't actually have hollow fangs. So, for example, if you're wearing anything at all and a sea snake bites you, you'll probably get no venom in the wound whatsoever, even if there's a wound, because they basically secrete the venom and it just gets caught on whatever you're wearing. So they're very inefficient. They have incredibly, incredibly toxic venom. Like sea snakes range between 2 and 10 times more venomous than king cobras. But the reason for that is that it's a nature aspect of, well, they've got incredibly inefficient biting mechanism and delivery system, so they've got to have very, very dangerous venom. But the chances of being bitten by a sea snake are minuscule.
Do we have Steve Irwin on the line here?
David Attenborough.
That's a mechanism.
Good.
Well done.
Not David Oldfield.
Jeez, this is crazy. Amber, before we let you go, best memory out there in Vanuatu, what's the one thing that you can reflect on 15 years later and go, that moment to me stands out the most?
Shivers. I mean, oh God, I don't know about best moment. I just think for me, it was a profound experience, because I really was going through the worst period in my life. And I felt very much like I was blessed to be given this bizarre opportunity, and it really, in a very big way or elaborate way, really kind of just sort of realigned me and sent me back into the real world, feeling, oh, actually, that's so wrong, because then I ended up in that next really bad relationship. Anyway, okay, so maybe my best experience was maybe being voted off and going for dinner with Dicko, because I felt fabulous that night, and then I felt shit again the next day. I don't know.
Good answer. Good answer.
Right, and I was, it was an honour to be amongst a lot of the cast, because, they were all, pretty amazing in their said spaces. So.
Plug your book, and before you go, anything final you want to say to any of the guys right now on the episode? You haven't spoken to, 15 years in the build-up. You're dying to tell David Oldfield off. David Mason, you're a prick. Why'd you cast me? Like, I don't know, like just anything before you go.
No, it's nice to see Justin's face, because, it's nice to see all of your faces, but I think I've been reminded just by seeing Justin how fond everyone was. We all of us girls were very fond of him, and
I think we bonded as soon as we got back from tribal council. I think there was a cigarette butt.
Yeah.
I took it back to camp. I was like, Emma, quick, dirty cigarette butt. Let's go. I think we started a relationship. Half cigarette butt we found.
I'm so glad that I'm the type that, instantly bonds with someone when there's things like dirty butt. There's a lot of that, man.
Not to mention the spooning and farting, which was obviously prominent all these years.
Exactly. Amber.
I just want to say, Amber, before we let you go, look, this is the third time we've had you on. Obviously, you were my first ever interview I did back on the Oz Network, which basically started this whole Australian Survivor archive. So I'll thank you for that again. But just quickly, has it been enjoyable reliving the Survivor all these years later with us?
Yeah, it has, and I am thankful for you and Ben, because I think it was a bit unfortunate that I really parked that almost like a shameful thing, which is stupid, and I really sort of didn't. Most people, if they had the opportunity to be on the show that we did, would be just, still talking about it still, which I'm sure Guy does, and, celebrating that, incredible experience in their life, whereas I really shoved it right away, didn't talk about it, full of shame about, the word celebrity, because, everyone was sort of like, oh, who's she, blah, blah, blah. And also, as I said, it was just a dark time in my life, and it continued to be a bit dark after that, but that was because I still hadn't really worked out my issues and unfortunately ended up in another very bad relationship. But so it's really nice that it's brought it back up for all the goodness rather than the dark time, and rather than me putting it back in that sort of, the shameful, the dark eras. So it's been great like that, and bringing, light moments to it all. It's been good.
I'm just glad that Matt and I suck at asking the serious questions, so that's probably where.
You two are fantastic. You've got good energy, and I really appreciate it.
And Amber, like I said, just before I let you go, I've just bought your book, as you know, and I can't wait to get in to read it. So you'll hear a lot more from me, because each chapter, I did it with David Oldfield. I just finished reading David Oldfield's book.
David, they told me I need to get your book.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll organise to send you one if you really want one, Amber.
It's good.
I'll organise to send you one too if you
we can give each other one then.
Look at that. I like it. Amber, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for once again joining us and reliving memories, and we'll chat again soon.
Amber.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Now, before I want to talk about Kukula, obviously with Justin and David, but David Mason, just while we're on the topic of Moso, do you have any memories of when you put sort of them all on the tribe, these initial, the gender split? We obviously talked a little bit about the idea behind adding sort of Justin and that differently, but do you, have any memories, thoughts of, whether on paper that then got on the beach and things were kind of how you were thinking they would be, or sort of?
It was pretty much down the gender split plus a bit of crumpet on each. So Gabrielle with the guys, Justin with the girls. It was as basic as that. We didn't want an absolute gender split because that's kind of not interesting. But having a lovely bit of crumpet with each, adds a frisson.
Well done, Justin. Your crumpet, mate.
Your crumpet. That's your cast as a crumpet.
I thought it was a bagel.
That's why you're on the big bucks, brother.
Was there anyone, David, from that original Mosa that surprised? Like, who was the one player on Mosa that surprised you the most? Whether it was that they didn't do as well or they did a lot better than you were thinking they would do?
Oh, I think Elton, to be honest.
Okay. As in, he surprised you he didn't do as well, or he did better than you thought he would do?
Yeah, my memory with Elton is that he didn't step up in the way that I thought he would. He seemed to be fairly slightly background, playing it slightly passively, and not really engaging with the game. And I thought he would be a stronger player.
Loved his steak, which, we talked a little bit about that. Justin, just quickly, before we move on to Kukula, just while we're on the topic of steak, want to get your anger off at all to Mr. Oldfield here for that whole, did fucking beef stroganoff stew. You just wanted your steak, right? Like,
I had to go back and remember that clip because we were really hungry. Because remember, I'd been on the female side. We never won a challenge, so I was pretty damn hungry. So by the time that steak came up and we won it, I would love David Oldfield to cook for me sometime when we're not on an island with your talent. But we were just playing freaking hungry. We just want to eat that steak. But when you're under pressure, when you're hungry, you're tired, you're wet, you're cold, and you look at a rare steak in front of you, I would have eaten a pig we found up in the. I think we went up looking for wood and for pawpaw and whatever else, and we saw there was a pig tied up. It was someone else's, one of the little farms up there, and we had a machete. I think we were ready to chop up a pig. So that steak was very good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
And David to throw in his spices and element.
Zesty salad.
Yeah, the zesty salad.
Which gave Elton the best. I don't give a shit about the salad. I just want the steak.
He's a true rugby man. He was also a big boy. He's a hungry boy. I don't think he could care less about what Jesse was on the steak.
I'd love to kind of.
I just want to ask you
go, Matt. Go, Matt.
With production, did production get in trouble at all? We heard with doing these interviews that there was a French survivor that had been there prior to you, and they had damaged one of the. They
fucked up the tree,
bamboo tree. Did you guys get in trouble for anything?
No. Our production partners, they're a Kiwi company, had done a lot of work in Fiji, and as soon as we were in pre-production, they went out to Fiji and started talking to not just the national government, but the local villages. And engaging with them.
I hope you mean Vanuatu, though.
Oh, Vanuatu. Yeah. No, they're in Fiji. We're in Vanuatu, forgive me. And engaging with the local villages and bringing them on board, absolutely. And so that everything we did was with their permission, in keeping with their community life, their beliefs. I remember we had some village visits. I remember some of the rewards, I think. And we told some stories about there's a big banyan tree that was very important for that. And so we encompassed all that within the show. We did not want to be there imposing our values, our TV show on their community. We actually wanted to make sure that we reflected their culture and their community within the show.
Which, I mean, Matt brought that up because on one of the episodes, it was the infamous, returning episode when obviously Guy and Justin eventually returned and Dicko's underneath the tree. And you were doing, I think, for the Channel 7 website at the time, weekly production notes. And you had mentioned in that week's one that, the French survivor had damaged it or they had done something to that tree. So you were saying how careful you were being underneath that tree.
Absolutely,
and respecting the land and culture and everything along those lines. Similar question now to David Oldfield and to Guy about sort of those initial Kakula days. I know in both your interviews you obviously talked a little bit about, you know, who you're familiar with and kind of relationships and all that. I might start with you, Guy. Like, do you remember those, again, early days on Kakula? Like any sort of memories that maybe we didn't talk about in the interview last week, maybe with Mr. Oldfield on the line right now that you kind of remember?
Well, I had Wayne up my sleeve because he was at the time he was living in Manly. And I saw him around, and so as soon as we got to the airport and I saw him there, we struck a chord straight away. But it worked in my disadvantage with how he was going with the girls, and I knew I was on a road to nowhere with him, and I was trying to calm him down and keep the girls happy, but he was just giving everyone the shit. So that didn't. That sort of went against the way I thought it was going to go. I thought David, I didn't like. I obviously knew David was more infamous than anything else based on his past as a politician, and so I got on with him straight away. Which I wouldn't say I was overly surprised, but it was. I thought based on his background, how I thought he was going to be, it wasn't like that at all. Gabby dropped in late, and she was just easygoing and easy to deal with, and I always felt that what you saw with her with what you got was a pretty girl that really was there probably for the money as well, and you could tell that she was going to check out at some stage and not want to hang around. So I liked the fact that she was there because I had her up my sleeve to be a bit of a fall guy, or fall girl.
Mr. Oldfield, similar question to you. Anything that sort of, on what Guy was saying, or sort of those early days and sort of those early moments on Kakula?
I thought that we had quite. Look, I say up front, and I think I said this when I was talking to you guys when we did our interview. I loved doing Survivor. I really enjoyed it, tremendously. I wasn't familiar with the show particularly. I'd only seen 1 or 2 episodes after having been cast. But I loved doing it. It's my favourite of the five, believe it or not, reality TV shows that I've done. Survivor was my absolute favourite. And I was raring to go. When it finished, I would have backed up and gone straight back into the jungle again. I enjoyed it that much. And when we were first just on the beach and there was Guy and Wayne and Elton and then, of course, Gabby turned up and there was me, I thought we had really a very nice time in many respects the first few days. I remember sitting up all night. I don't know how I got talked into this, but probably because she was, quite frankly, so hot that, Gabby talked me into staying up with her the first night she was there because she was obviously jet lagged or something. I didn't want to go to sleep. And so I remember doing that. But just, the boys and all that stuff, I thought we had a really nice time. We did some funny sorts of things. And I told you guys, I don't think this ever actually made the final cut, but I talked everyone into chopping down a coconut palm. And so we'd actually sort of gone out there with our machetes and taken turns and chopped down this sort of like 20-metre high coconut palm because I convinced everybody that the best coconuts were the ones that were not quite going to fall off. They were sort of green inside, had plenty of milk and everything. And that never made the cut. This environmental vandals that we were in the jungle.
That's right.
Chopping down this very large coconut palm. But by and large, the first few days I sort of thought were very relaxed and we had a nice time and we won a couple of challenges and we were sort of getting a few things and we were horrified, of course, when the swap came and it all sort of got mixed up like that. But I enjoyed the whole.
It was good early on because we were winning too, wasn't it? Like you went back to camp every time victorious and things were smooth. And I kept thinking, how good is it they've pitted most of the guys together against the girls? I mean, the way the challenges are going, this is just going to be like knocking down Skittles. Then obviously, the flip was going to happen because it was just one-sided. So
and the only one you lost is because of bloody Ben Wynn. Let's be honest. That's the only one you ended up.
You guys are giving it to him. Imagine if he's listening to all this.
Yeah. If he's listening, great. He's alive. We know he exists. We'd love him. Ben,
you guys might not be. He might literally do you both in.
Probably. I mean, he's probably got connections. I mean, look, let's be honest. He'll come on the show. I just won't be on it. Matt will be on it because Matt likes the guy. I've just been David Mason. Any luck to get in the Rolodex? Find out who he was.
Yeah, look, the whole Ben Wynn thing. That was. I mean, we talked about it when we talked earlier. The whole of that was us trying to eke out more episodes for the budget we had. And obviously we're throwing money at all of you guys to appear. We didn't have the budget to pad out the entire 13 episodes, I think it was, with celebrity cast. So we were just thinking of different ways that we could introduce people that were frankly going to be cheaper than you guys. And Ben was one idea. and the return of the cast.
What would happen
To this day, I so regret it. It goes against everything in Survivor. But that was frankly a way to get more episodes out of the cast we had.
What would happen if he won, David? Because he never had a charity. Would he? What would have happened? You would have had to quickly find him a charity.
I really don't know. I don't think we ever considered that you guys, the rest of the cast, would let him win.
No.
Because he's just too strong.
I think David and I and a couple. We had a chat early on and just said, "No, he's whatever happens, we've just got him on the list to go to lead straight away." So it gave us at least another 2 days to not have to worry. Yeah,
that's what we kind of figured.
Well, as soon as we found all the spinach, the sugar cane, as soon as we found out there's a whole fruit and veg up there in the jungle behind our tribe, then he was going after that. I think Leachy was like, all right, we know where our food is, so he was next off the chopping board.
Done his job, basically. That's all he needs to do.
Pretty much.
Just quickly on the swap, David Mason, was it structured? Like you knew after 2 votes that's when the swap would, or was it fluid? Yeah. Could you have changed that?
No. It was fluid, but we knew it was going to be Ep 2 or 3, or Ep 3 or 4. Because as Guy said, we knew the guys were going to nail a lot of the challenges. We tried to make the challenges less physical in some ways, but no, we knew the guys were going to win them, and then we'd have to do the swap at some stage anyway. But we figured Ep 3 we're going to have to do. And we wanted to do it early anyway to split up the alliances, to mix it up early so that everyone was slightly unsure again and didn't settle into a set piece of how it's all going to play out. That was, again, a fear about that you guys were just going to outthink the game and have a series of set pieces. So we needed to be able to mix it up when we needed to stop that happening.
Which is what we've talked a lot about throughout the season, is kind of just this middle period this season falls into, I guess, the Survivor history. Obviously, season 1, Whalers Way, was very old school, very structured, no tribe swap, not really a whole bunch of, blindsides, things like that. Whereas this season was kind of the middle. It was still very classic feeling, but you had a tribe swap, you had blindsides, obviously the infamous returning player twist and everything, which obviously the Channel 10 seasons now do a whole lot more with kind of things like that. But I mean, I don't know if I know we talked a bit to you about.
I think we were the first Survivor ever to have people, returnees, and in my mind, still, it's completely wrong. The returnees had just spent a few days or more eating up, resting, and then they come back to the rest of the tribe.
You do it a bit differently. I think when we did that episode,
the whole thing is wrong. It's against the philosophy of what Survivor should be. I think
Matt and I came to the and again, it's sort of like, if you're gonna do that, do it early. Don't do it second last episode. Do it like at the merge or something, like because
completely.
That's where it starts out. Which you've now got, though. Obviously, the time of recording this most recent Channel 10 season, we had Haley, who got voted out and then came. So you've obviously been joined by someone else now who's been voted out and come back in the game, right? So you're now not the only.
Probably didn't come back in right at the end, though, did they?
Look, I haven't seen it. I just know that she did it. Matt, you would have to kind of go into the explanation of that, but
it was done early. when we were planning it, thinking, well, we're going to have to do this, it didn't occur to us for a moment that whoever was returning would end up winning. Because I thought there'd be so much anger against them, or thinking everyone else would be thinking this is so unfair, they don't deserve to win, they've already been voted out, they don't deserve to come back, they don't deserve to win. And everyone, all of us were completely flabbergasted.
I have to jump in there. I'm sorry. So David, I wasn't the only one who was blindsided by the stupidity of some of the people who were involved in the show then, because that's very interesting hearing you say that, because it really is a matter of, if we get back to what happened where I was concerned with Imogen and Nicole, and that was that, I never, not in a million years would I have ever trusted either of them. What I trusted was that it didn't make any sense to do what they did. And it was my trust in the fact that you couldn't possibly be so silly as to turn 3 votes against 2 into 2 against 2.
Yeah.
And that was how I got caught out in that sense. But so
you got to remember this though. So when we got the note under the door the night before we went back in, and I remember seeing this note going, no way, they're giving us another shot at this. Couldn't believe it, right? And then we knew Gabby didn't want to go back in, so she was going to throw it. She didn't want to go back in for any money, right? So she was out. So it was only going to be between Elton, me and Justin. And we all made a pact that we knew full well that the 2 coming in against the 3 that were already there were sitting ducks. And we had to come up with something that was plausible enough, a story that had some sort of strength to be able to play, to give us a chance of not just going and getting slaughtered again. Because we all knew that. Like, we all knew that we're going back in to fill some more episodes but we were just dead men walking. We knew that, right? So we went in there pre-planned of what we were going to do. And we knew we had
That's very clever of you. Yeah.
We had a day
David,
to do it. And Justin and I, once we knew that if any 3 of us went in, we had a plan to go. And we had to execute it really quickly. And because Elton missed out and Justin and I were going in, we knew to the letter what we were going to do. And we come up with all different scenarios on that morning when we were going back into the game. And we came up with the one that we thought was the one that the girls might believe against you, David. And as we know, it worked. So,
and some of those 2 plans was part of David's crafty work was coming undone, because when he pushed with the girls, we backed off. And then when he backed off, we pushed with the girls and pushed back to him. Like we already had this flavour sorted out by the time.
Yeah, and it was a cat and mouse game, because we knew David was going to stay around the girls and not let us near them to give us a chance to have a word to them. And I remember going back in and I said to David, is the one scenario that we played first, which we knew wouldn't work, but we played it out, was I went up to you, David, and said, listen, mate, come up against the 2 of us. You've got a much better chance of winning against the 2 girls. You pretty much can't beat Imogen, I don't think. And if you go up against the 2 of us, because we get rid of the girls, then you're pretty much going to win Survivor, because you've been there the whole time. So that was the first play. And you said, nah, sorry, Leachy, mate, I'm loyal to the girls, but I'm going to go against you. And we shook hands basically and said, it'll be what it'll be. So there was that bit. Then we went to the second scenario, which was that, mate, we told the girls that David wanted to go up against the blokes because he wanted to have a full ding-dong battle, and he felt like he had a better chance of beating the blokes who had been out of the show and coming back in than beating the girls.
David, you're screwed either way, because if you think about it, you've got Justin and Guy who are tight. They've come back into the game. They're forces. They're doing whatever they can to survive. And you've got Imogen and Nicole who are basically unbreakable. So you are the middleman there. And eventually they all ended up, rather than you you sided with Nicole and Imogen because you thought they were going to be loyal, but ultimately at the end of the day, you were kind of odd man out. You didn't really have...
I was with Imogen and Nicole because I had committed myself. That was the thing. And I can't even remember now how much of it went to air ultimately, but I think some of it probably didn't, because I was explaining it so thoroughly that it probably wasn't stuff they wanted necessarily coming out. But I sat them both down and I said, look, there are people coming back in here, or coming in. I don't know how it's going to happen, but there are more contestants. And they sort of said, well, how can that be so? Well, because there's not enough of us here for this to go, well, we know how long we're going to be here. We know how the game plays with the reward and the challenge and so and so. Yeah, it stands to reason there are more days left in what we're filming than there are us for it to work out the way it's been. So something's going to happen. I don't know whether it's going to be one or two people, but somebody is coming into the game somehow. I had no idea it was going to be Guy and of course, Justin coming back, but I knew someone was coming. And I explained all that to them. And we had the conversation about, well, look, there's the three of us, no matter who comes back, all we've got to do is just stick together and just keep voting them back off again. And then we'll be back to the original three. And yeah, I know you two are together. Whatever happens then, well, that's what happens. And I'm kind of stuck with it. And they agreed to all that. And I agreed with them. So, I was kind of stuck with them because I said that I would do that. I was let down, I'm afraid, by my own lack of judgment in realising that they could be so silly to believe, the fact they fell for what Justin and Guy were telling them is the crazy thing. Because for me, it just all came down to numbers.
You took the percentage chance of what it should have been. Like you went the percentages, and it should have gone that way.
It should have gone just purely based on. It should have gone that way purely based on numbers. There were three of us. There were two of you. There were three of us. There were two of you. 3 votes always beats 2. For some reason, they never worked out that 3 votes always beats 2. And they turned it into 2 against 2.
Where we got it, mate, was that if either 2 girls went up against us at tribal council, that there were a good chance of beating us based on we were out of the show. That was the kicker, right?
Correct. And the girls were forward thinking.
Had you agreed, I reckon, had you agreed with me at that time on the beach to go, you know what, screw it, Leti, we'll go with you guys. And you went against what you were saying, which you didn't want to do, I know, because you wanted to play straight bat. I get it. But had you done that, you probably would have been the winner of Survivor. Had you gone well on that last challenge, you very well would have won Survivor, because it's an easy story to tell the jury that you've been here from day dot and the other 2 haven't. And that's why Justin and I had to get the finish against each other, because we're both equally busted with the vote out and the coming back in again. So
look, the only regret that I have from all of it is failing to anticipate that people could be as silly as to think 3 votes wasn't as good as 2.
I think you're missing the point that for them, mate, taking either one of us, if they get through us to the last 2, gives them a better chance of winning. I would have thought.
No,
I mean, I
understand exactly what you're saying, Guy. But what I would point out is that sometimes you can think so far ahead that you don't get ahead, because what they first needed to get through was get past where we were. And to get past where we were was 3 votes against 2, and that was the way it was going to go. And then the most likely scenario from my point of view where they were concerned was that there'd be the 3 of us left again, and something would happen where the 2 of them would vote me out. I was fully expecting that we would go through with the best chance of the 3 of us finishing up at the end again, and then the 2 girls would be positioned to vote me out, and one of them would win. That's how I saw it happening. They, from what you're saying, were looking too far ahead without realising what they had to do to get there in the first place.
At the end of the day,
with Survivor, to be fair, if you watch episodes over the years, the good player, well, when I say the good players, but the normal thinking is you start working when you're getting down to the pointy end, who you want to take to the last 2. Like you do that on purpose, because you think about when you go up to the jury and you plead your case, you need a better story than the other person. And that's what we played on. We played on the fact that, listen, if you get to the last 2 with David, you might not win. You get to the last 2, Nicole or Imogen, with either Justin or me, how the cards fall, you're going to win. And that's why they decided.
And at the end of the day, I think that applauds it.
I wasn't looking at what would happen when I got to the last 2. And I can probably hear fans of Survivor go, oh my God, what were you thinking? And that was because I never expected to get to the last 2. I fully expected to, where we were, to retain the original final 3 as the final 3 based on the way votes would work 3 against 2 and our percentages of good fortune where that was concerned. And that ultimately the most likely thing is that the 2 of them would then vote me off. So that was where I was always seeing it. But I understand exactly what you're saying.
It's a lot of crossover.
I get what you're saying too.
It's that middle ground of the old school, new school mentality of Survivor. And guys, you've talked a lot about, you were a fan of the show, so and I think at the end of the day, the ultimate situation shows that as we've talked in both your interviews, that both you and Justin, like you outplayed all three of them. You somehow turned that situation into your advantage, and you outplayed them.
I said to Justin, I don't care about the money. I just want to win. And when that letter came back in from David, extending the show a couple of eps, with a budget that wasn't big, it was a chance. And I literally said to myself, I'm not going down this time. I went out pretty quiet the first time. I couldn't turn around the crew from voting me out on the when the merge came. I couldn't do it, but I literally was filthy that I couldn't fight hard enough. And when I got the chance to go back in, I was going to throw the kitchen sink at it because I didn't care about the money. All I cared about was winning. And
Justin cared about the money. We know Justin cared about the money.
Sorry, I just got a question for Dave, mate Mason. Hi, mate. If in the production, because I feel like we've been kind of accountable that some of us went off and we got an overnight shower and a good meal, and then we came back home, which I thought was a bit of a nightmare because your stomach has then got to shrink. You go through all that need for food. So yeah, you're fresh for the first 2 days in, but somehow I think it played against you when you went off and got refreshed because you went through the rehab again of the whole thing. Why was not production? Why didn't you set up a camp? If this was a planned thing, why wasn't it an area where we could just be in no man's land, still on the land, still not in a hotel? Why not something?
No, fair, that's a really, really good question. I don't think we thought that far ahead. I don't think we had time to think it. We weren't, shooting at the hip, but we were sort of running on empty a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the staffing, frankly, to have another camp, to mind you, to look after you, to manage you in some respect like that. We thought, in the hotel, then we'll deal with it.
And you probably thought that we were going out straight away anyway, so who gives a shit?
Yeah. And to some extent, anything that doesn't happen on camera is of less concern to us. I mean, but you're absolutely right. That's what we should have done. But no, we didn't do that. And to be honest, we always considered that anyone who was returned would be the first to go. They'd episode fodder, and that's all it was.
So
we had no idea that you guys were going to be strategizing and end up being in the final two. That was.
We were big time strategizing. Yeah, we were over a beer. We were strategizing because we just shook hands and said, let's go in there and play the game.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely masterful. It took us. I have to say, at the time, I was disappointed. I was worried. I was worried about how we were going to tell this story to the audience and what the audience would think about the fairness of it, because we didn't think it was fair, frankly. And yet, this is what had happened, and so we had to be able to tell the story. But it would have been a much easier story to tell had the girls got through, or David. And a much easier story to tell, and the guys had got their comeuppance at the hands of the girls or David or whatever, and nice easy story, out we go. But it took a lot more storytelling on our side to try and explain what was going on.
I mean, Imogen and David deserve to win, based on the whole rundown of the thing. But Justin's an athlete and a competitor from yesteryear, and that's all I've ever been. And the problem you had was that it turned out exactly how you didn't want, and we were not going to do anything else but fight to the bitter end because you gave us a chance to. So
which is the one thing I wanted to touch on that quickly is that in both Guy and Justin, your interviews, you talked about sort of some coming together with Mr. Mason. And I don't want to sort of dwell on and sort of go in and relive all that, but like for you, David Mason, was it like a bunch of pressure that you were feeling? Like Justin told me about the conversation you had with him about that final vote. Was that just you were panicking? It was like production, like shit, what are we going to do with this season right now if Imogen doesn't get to the end? And you were kind of thinking about like, what was that thought process?
The thought process for us is all about storytelling. And the last thing we want is nothing happening. Here we had a heap happening. And I'd much rather extract clarity out of a complex situation than try and create something interesting when nothing is happening. So we were relieved that shit was happening. We were just thinking we just don't know how we're going to explain this and how this can possibly be true to Survivor when a returnee or a pair of returnees end up being in the finals. It's and my panic was really about how we've blown what Survivor is meant to be. We, as far as I know, we're the first show to have returnees into Survivor.
Pearl Islands, US Survivor had done that on Pearl Islands.
Had they? I did not know that.
Yeah, and one of the players got, well, if you're familiar with Sandra, first two-time winner, that was the first season she won. She went to the end with an outcast by the name of Lil, and so there was one player that got brought to the end who had come back into the game, but obviously Sandra well and truly won. So again, had Imogen maybe gone with Justin, we'd be talking differently about your season, of course, completely. But you know, because if Burton and Lil had have gone to the end in Pearl Islands, US Survivor would be a very different story as well. It's kind of interesting, but it was fascinating both hearing from Guy and Justin kind of confrontations at the end and sort of everything. And it's just, you're right at the end of the season. It's kind of like Guy and Justin, you're both in this mode where you're like, you've got back in, as Guy, you were saying, you're desperate. You're going to do anything to kind of get there. So it's kind of, it's interesting to kind of, to look back and hear these behind the scenes stories that ultimately we never get to see. We wish we had Ponderosa going there, David, like what they do on the Channel 10 ones. We could have seen some very juicy stuff going on between the contestants and the productions, and Guy's foot coming off the thing at the end there and everything that came from that.
I mean, look, David Mason and I had our run-ins a couple of times, but to be fair, we sorted all that out. I get where he was coming from. I know that he had his producer cap on. Mate, he was running this show for the network. He was paid to do it. He was trying to come up with the best product. Mate, I was there to win. And he was just in my way to do that at that time. So, so I got nothing against him now, but at the time he was my enemy, you know. So,
and look, I think I told the guys this last time. I was terrified of all of you because, you know, you could just gang up, as you nearly did after that big storm, and just collapse the entire production. And I was, you know, we were living on a knife edge all the time that any of you, or rather more than one of you at a time, could crack the shits and walk off and leave us scrabbling to create a show.
To be fair, the three of us here right now would be the last ones to walk away from the show, though.
Fair enough.
Characters to do that. It's more the girls or something. You know, so.
I don't think that's very Australian either. You get signed up. Any of us who have got any professional history with contracts, you sign up for a contract, you just finish it out.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if any of you had thought that we in production were mishandling it, were stuffing up the game, in fact, not being responsible for safety, all the stuff that you expect on a set, anywhere you know you're shooting, and more importantly, just stuffing up Survivor, you would almost be right in having a rebellion.
Season 1 did it.
We were on the verge of stuffing up Survivor.
We had that Vanuatu staff member that was getting us biscuits from set.
Yeah.
That kept us alive for a few
And Wayne
months.
telling the story when he got taken off for medical reasons, stealing all the cans of Coke and everything. You know, he was stealing stuff and giving it to everybody. So, but it's season 1. It happened, of course. Stephen Peters told the story that they decided last minute to make it a final 3, which of course was unheard of in Survivor at that point. And essentially, Shona, Joel, and Rob mutinied. They were like, "Nah, fuck it, we're not doing anything right now." And Stephen Peters threatened to say, "Well, you're all fired, and whoever got 5th will win." But basically, they held the cards, and Stephen Peters relented, and they went back to the final 2. So it's kind of that level. One real quick thing I'd like to ask you, David, just while we're on the topic of production, things like that. Justin, as I said earlier, clarified the whole sort of storyline around this bribery scandal that happened on the season and everything on those lines. And the thing that fascinated me when Justin telling that is the amount of conversations he could have without cameras being there, and was able to kind of play the cameras and kind of be able to have these conversations without it being filmed. Do you sort of look back and think how that was possible? Like, how is that possible that you are able to get players having conversations off camera? Because I would assume it's sort of a case of you have to, besides them taking a leak or something like that, like everything has to be filmed.
Everything has to be filmed, but we have only a certain number of camera crews on rotation. And, we're not there all the time.
Yeah.
A couple of people wander off to go and get water or do this or do that.
You go for a swim. You go in the ocean. You can't. They're not coming out.
We can't be filming. We can't be hearing.
Was that a budget issue? Was that because the budget was smaller? Because you wouldn't do that on Channel 10 today. There's no way they would let that happen.
You could. You could swim out. You could swim out 300 metres and you could have a conversation.
A difference between normal Survivor and Celebrity Survivor is that, frankly, we're dealing with professionals. They know how filming works. Normally it's scripted or whatever, but they know how it works. We have to play that game as well. And we have to acknowledge, you know what we need. We know what you need. We're going to have to do this together to come out with a good product. Right. So we're going to have to rely on you to play with us, but we can't impose things. We can't demand things out of you which are unreasonable, that would be unreasonable on a film set, on a TV set. So there was that balance all the way through, that a bit of you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours, within the nature of the game, I think.
And I can imagine that made it difficult.
You've raised that, David. I have to say that having done all of these other shows since, one of the reasons why Survivor remains my favourite. I've done Hell's Kitchen, and there's been 5 of them all up, and I enjoyed Hell's Kitchen, I must say, because I enjoy cooking and I liked Marco Pierre White and all that. But the thing which always stays with me, where what you did with Survivor, is that it was more real. When you talk about reality TV, you didn't try, certainly there was not an element of manipulation that I have seen, which really dominates all of the other shows that I've done since, where the producers really are fundamentally trying to script what takes place. You didn't do that at all. Yours was very real, in the sense that you weren't truly trying to manipulate all of these outcomes and get certain people to say certain things. And shows that I've done since, you've got people in your ear saying, go over and say so and so, such and such, to go over to Janet over there and tell her that you really like what she's wearing. You get all this sort of stuff happening all the time, or someone would say, just move over closer to the wall because they want to tell you something through the microphone in the wall. There wasn't anything like that. I mean,
thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that, because that's part of my philosophy about making this kind of TV, is that all we need to do, all we want to do, is set up a situation where people are under stress and have to make decisions, and then we just see what happens. And that makes it much more interesting. Frankly, you guys are way more interesting than anything that we could have concocted.
You did it enormously well.
And let you guys run it.
You did it enormously well, and you did it in a fashion that was just so utterly different to every experience that I've had since.
Thank you, David. I'm flattered by that. Thank you. Thank you.
No question, Dave.
Yeah, I find it would have been difficult when you're dealing with a few of us that know how much dirty laundry to air out in front of the camera. You have a few contestants that don't know any better, which is shameless, say whatever shit they want to say. And then you had a few of us which were quite reserved, quite happy to share it off camera, but not on camera.
Yeah, completely.
It's just way we want to be seen in the general medium. But I just clicked that battle for you.
We also felt that in the first few days, everyone was going to be reserved and using, your on-camera professionalism and all those judgments. We did think that after the first week, a lot of that would drop, and you'd forget about it because you're now so immersed in the game, and would get those other jewels coming out. And we did it here and there, but by and large, you guys were all cast were utterly professional media people, professional performers. And you all knew you were performing. You're in the game, but you were all performing. And so you're performing for the camera, not in a circus way or, a stage way, but you knew what the show needed. And we really in production, we really appreciated that. And we never wanted to push you to do it. We would never have asked the girls to go off and take their tops off and go for a swim. Never in a million years. The fact that they did, well, a bit of fruit for one of the episodes. We'd never have asked people to do anything like that. We just knew you guys would end up doing your thing to try and win the game, and we're so relieved that that's exactly what you did.
And that's the substantial difference that I was getting at just a moment ago, because these days, and the experiences that I've had since, is the producers would ask the girls to go and do that. They would try and set up scenarios. They'd try and actually create certain circumstances between different cast members by actually feeding lines to one person to go and give to another.
Survivor's always been almost that sacred show that, I mean, obviously there are elements in which, hey, let's throw in this challenge that's going to suit this player because we want to keep them in the game longer, things like that the US Survivor has done. But for the most part, Survivor is almost still that show where you don't really get a lot of interference. I mean, Matt, obviously you only lasted 2 days. That's not me making fun of you. I'm just pointing out. But like you would have experienced that with the modern Survivor. That's not really happening, is it? Like, it's a very sacred, almost reality show still, to the truest sense of the word.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting with my season because half the cast were actually celebrities that had been used to the media, but obviously the tribe I was on, it was just the normal everyday people. So of course, that's why they pick. They probably pick someone like me because they know I had plenty to say in front of the camera. So I didn't have that background in media. You don't really think at the time, or how are they going to edit this? You're not thinking like this. A normal person's thinking like this. Where the other tribe, who are full of people that have spent 10, 20, 30 years in front of the camera, they know what to expect. So that's the difference. But you're right. Like they're not feeding you lines. They might they ask you, well, you had a conversation with this person. What happened? But they just want you to tell the story because they want to get it on camera.
If only you lasted longer than 2 days, maybe you might have said something. So
I had on one particular show that I was on, I faced a situation or saw a situation multiple times where the producers were actually even trying to manipulate the host based on the people they felt the network wanted to stay in the show and all that. So they were completely manipulating everything, including who would be sort of tossed out at different times based on the network desires, depending on whether the person that was in the show was somewhere else on the network featured. And really some of the things that I've come into contact with in the other reality shows have been diabolically inappropriate, but it's ways. I just want to ask David something, if I can. David, during obviously you had the surprising aspect of what took place after the reintroduction of Guy and Justin, but were there other things that took place in challenges or anything else where the outcomes seemed to be surprising to you? Were there it just played out naturally as you thought it would?
All played out. All we wanted to do is make sure that whoever was playing in a challenge, it was a fair game. Everyone had a good chance. Obviously, Imogen and water, that was always going to be a problem, but we just wanted to make sure that, frankly, most of the time it's a sporting event. You want to see who is going to win and how and who's going to surprise. We had absolutely no interest in making one person or one tribe win anything. It wouldn't have changed anything in how the story gets told in that episode or over the arc of the entire series. So no, we had absolutely no interest in who won. Let's get it done, and I hope the challenge works.
I meant more in the sense of obviously you have, without trying to manipulate anything, you have some expectations as to how you think things might turn out. Was there anything that was surprising at all?
We didn't even have expectations, frankly,
right.
Other than my only expectation was that any returnees would be the first to be booted out again. And that worried me slightly because it would be then predictable. Which it turned out not to be.
I'd love to sort of, bring this to a close with some just quick fire questions, just some, little things here to kind of get some memories. And there's one big question I want to close out on, which is something that Matt touched on. But similar to what I asked Amber, and again, I know we kind of went over this in each of your individual ones here, but maybe there could be some things you can share it here. Best memories out there in Vanuatu that you had at any point in the game. I'm going to start with Justin. Do you have sort of a standout for you that, even if you didn't talk about in the interview, that's come to mind since we spoke?
Yeah, I think when we took that helicopter ride to the volcano, and I was just, I'll never forget it in my life. The volcano burst a bit in front of me, a rock went over my head, and I realised I was a bit too close. And something I'll never forget is landing on a volcano and walking up the volcano and seeing all the lava. I'll take it with me to my grave. It was amazing, just amazing.
One thing, David Mason, that we've spoken a lot on, Matt and I, in our episode since we interviewed you, is two things. Is that probably not a dud challenge in the entire season. It might be the only Australian Survivor season that is 100% perfect in all the challenges. And B, some of the best rewards, if not the best rewards I've ever seen on Australian Survivor, because you were talking about that cultural element to bring Justin and the crew to a volcano, to have the bungee jumping that I know we talked about because that was a Who Dares Wins challenge, and just things like that make the season so memorable. So yeah, definitely. I know we talked a little bit about in our interview with you, but that's one thing that Matt and I have very high praise for season 2 of Australian Survivor are the challenges and the rewards. You're welcome. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else there, but we'll go on there. David Oldfield, best memory for you out there in Vanuatu?
I don't think there's anything particularly that I could isolate. I enjoyed the whole experience. The thing which I felt was unusual, I think probably people may have thought was unusual, was that I actually found it really quite relaxing. And I told this to you guys, I had great sleep. We were living this kind of semi-Stone Age existence where the sun went down, and very shortly after the sun went down, we pretty much went to bed. So I went to sleep earlier in the night than I'd ever been to sleep in my life before. And so we were pretty much, in this Stone Age scenario of keeping the fire. We had to keep the fire going somehow. We put covers on it, things like that. It was these embers because it was too hard to get it, lit. We didn't have matches, so it was going to be too hard to get it lit the next day. And I enjoyed all that aspect of it, but I really did. I had good sleep. I went to sleep pretty much after sundown and then woke up pretty much before sun up. And I actually found it being removed from mobile phones and the media and newspapers and everything else. I actually found the whole thing kind of relaxing in that sense. And I went into it with no expectation of winning. And so, I wasn't sort of disappointed at all in any of those aspects. And on that, I have to say that it's all very well for us to pick bits and pieces as to what may have been different. And even this evening, as we've been doing this, I was thinking, might it have been different if we'd have voted off Justin instead of Amber when we did? And, my experience in life is such that, the way I think about things, it's very hard to pull out one thing and think it's going to change something down the end, because as soon as you alter something, it alters then a cascading series of events. So it's hard to say if you were to ask us the question, is there one thing you might have done differently? I could probably come up with 20 things I might have done differently, but the reality is, would any of those things change the outcome to being better or worse where I was concerned? I don't begrudge Guy winning. I think that Guy should have ultimately win. That's nothing against you, Justin. I just thought, Guy has always been such a physical competitor that he was the right person to win. And once it all happened, that the reintroduction was done and all that, it was my expectation, sincerely, that it should go that way. And it did. And probably that was part of because I didn't ever expect to win myself. So, for me, there wasn't one standout thing. I'm not sure there was anything that any of us could have done to change any aspect of it if we could have, in hindsight, done so that would have altered things in a way that would have been able to be seen because of the cascading effect of so many other things that change when you pull the plug on one thing in a historical matter. It was good. I enjoyed it. As I said earlier, I would have gone straight back in.
Perfect. Guy, yourself, I guess the obvious one is winning, but outside of that.
I mean, David's right with, like the Survivor and having watched it over the years, it's very liquid. It just moves constantly. It's a moving chessboard that you can predict a little bit, but you can go insane if you go overboard with that. There's certainly that aspect to the show. I mean, you do have to have your eyes on different scenarios, but you're right, mate. You change one thing and it changes all these other things down the line. So that's why some people play Survivor and and they literally just fluff their way through to the end and they're no great threat and they don't win, but they get to the last 2 or 3, as opposed to other incredible performers that don't go far because people work it out and they get rid of them. So that's what Survivor's about. For me, certainly with what Justin said, that you went up on that helicopter and props to David Mason for spending his cookies on the the helicopter ride and just that trip up to that volcano because, like I'll always remember that. That was amazing. And you're right. I remember Justin going further forward than I did, and this rock went over his head and landed not far from me. I thought, shit, this thing's real. It's actually a dead set volcano. So that was memorable. But there isn't one situation, a bit like David was saying. For me personally, I went on the show to win. David went on to do it, and we heard from Amber why she went on, and we heard why Justin went on, and we're all four of us are different with our approach of why we went and did Survivor. The thing for me is because I was such a Survivor fan, David Mason did a hell of a job of creating what Survivor is, because I felt like I was in Survivor for the days I was there. So, to give him credit for a limited budget and to appease certain celebrities that, mate, are soft-skinned and could throw a tantrum at any time, as opposed to others, and I could name names, but I'm not going to. Mate, you created what felt like Survivor, and I know we did this podcast earlier where you asked me about what it was like, and I'm like, mate, it is Survivor because it felt like Survivor. And what I sat down on the lounge as a kid watching was it felt like when I was in it. And you can't get any better than that for me because, I got to win it, but to experience being in Survivor and that feeling exactly like what it was. So I never went to bed in that shelter going, oh, yeah, it's sort of like Survivor, like I thought it was going to be, but not as much. Mate, I was in Survivor. So I got to live the dream. So if you love it and you're a fan and you're that person that goes, I would love to be in that one day, mate, I got to compete.
Fantastic. So for you, David Mason, similar question, but I guess it's it's nice to hear things like that. Obviously, kind of the product 15 years later.
I'm really flattered, and thank you for saying that. And
it was the real deal. It was the real deal.
Each of you have said exactly what I feel about the show. So with Justin, a lot of the experiential stuff that I too was enjoying. So I'm a diver, so I was doing a lot of diving and the water stuff. The helicopter out to the volcano, or the cultural bit. I remember pinching myself that I'd go home, the hotel, nice 5-star hotel each night, have a nice meal, sleep in a nice bed, go for a swim, come back to work the following morning on the beach or wherever. I was having a great time. So experientially, it's awesome. I think my greatest memories, though, going to what Guy was saying, about real Survivor on a real limited budget. Our budget for the series was a little bit more than a budget for an episode of US Survivor. That's the difference. And I remember in pre-production when we'd set up Tribal Council and we did a pre-light to make it, just to check that it looked okay, that it was real. And we did the pre-light, lit the flares, and I was looking at the monitors and thinking, holy Christ, this is Survivor. We're actually going to do this now. This feels like Survivor. We haven't got anyone there on set, besides some of our crew sitting in for you guys. And I said, this is Survivor. I can hear the conches now in my head. We're doing it. And that buzz. And then coming down to every single challenge or whatever. And the art department, what they pulled out and made it look like Survivor. Every single challenge, everything that they did, and they created and they built from scratch. And some of it looked fabulous. Some of it was small scale, some of it was big scale, but it looked fabulous. Looking at the rushes each night and thinking, yep, this is Survivor. This looks big. This looks every bit as big as the US show. But my biggest memory was the end of the final episode and the relief. I didn't care who. I couldn't even remember who won, frankly. The relief.
I'll interrupt.
Okay, cut. That's a wrap. We've done it. We've got the show in the can. Well done, everyone. And just the relief that, yes, we've actually got this show nailed.
Fantastic.
And if I can just finish it off, I just want to thank the whole cast for putting up with us, because we put you guys through shit. and you returned and just delivered a cracking show for us and for the Australian audience. You guys made my life easy. Not all the time, but 90% of the time, you guys made my life and our life in production and making TV so easy because you just played the game and you delivered. And
Wow.
when it came out on the show, and so thank you guys for doing that.
Great. I love it. I love the Love Fest. And just transitioning into the big question I wanted to ask, and I know we touched on this with you, David, and a few of you as well. I always like finding about the legacy. I mean, what we're doing on this show is to celebrate the legacy of your season, to acknowledge it. We're doing that with all the seasons, no matter what network they are of Australian Survivor. And just on this, since we spoke to you, David Mason, and a lot of things have gone down. Guys talked at length about how he was called by Channel 10, so kind of there is this weird almost connection that exists now between the eras of Survivor. We're just about to see now in 2022 that Big Brother, now on Channel 7, is doing a returning player season acknowledging all eras of Big Brother. So they are bringing back Channel 10, they're bringing back Channel 9 and Channel 7. Now, obviously, as we know, Big Brother was a much bigger show, and it would be very hard for Channel 7 to do a All-Stars returning player without acknowledging the Channel 10 and the Channel 9 one. Survivor's a different beast because it exists very differently. And Matt touched on, obviously, his season, and a thing we've argued is that this Champions versus Contenders format almost puts this season into the fact that it is more of a legit Survivor now because you've got half celebrities now, kind of what they're doing on Channel 10 now. I guess my long-winded question to each of you, what would you like the legacy of Season 2 of Australian Survivor to be? Would you like there to be more acknowledgement or Channel 10 to potentially be like, hey, yes, Guy, we want you on. David Oldfield, we want you on. Justin, like, give me, I don't know, I'm asking 50 questions in one here. I'll start with you, David Mason, because you were the last one there and you're the EP. But legacy, is there anything that you think would like to be now that say about the legacy of your season to anybody listening or watching today?
I think my thoughts is a negative. I don't think what we did was the greatest Survivor in the history of Survivor because of all our manipulations, frankly, which muddied what Survivor should be. I would like to think that we didn't screw the format, that we didn't screw it up. For Survivor fans, they felt that it was legit Survivor, even though, frankly, a celebrity Survivor doesn't quite feel like a real Survivor, and having returnees and all this, not quite real. But I'd love Survivor fans and the wider audience to think it was Survivor and it was entertaining.
I'd agree with that, 100%. Guy, you're the winner. Anything to add on the legacy? I know, again, we mentioned last week.
Look, I'd love Channel 10 to be able to go and, basically give the audience the opportunity to see other people that could perform well in Survivor have a crack. I mean, at the end of the day, like what David Mason was given was some money to put on Survivor to entertain the audience and get people watching it, get eyeballs watching it on the screen. And it makes sense that if you've got talent that have done it before, that have done well, then why wouldn't you pit them up against other people that have done well as well? Because,
100%.
For you guys that are Survivor fans, then you're like, I'd love to see how David Oldfield will go against, the crew now if he came back. So, to me, it just seems like, well, it just makes sense. And this whole network rivalry should just be put in its place based on the fact that Survivor's Survivor. It's the first and real reality TV show that's still standing today because the formula's right. And the rest of them go by the wayside. And it's the only one I was willing to do. And ironically, I could have signed a contract to go and do the ice skating, celebrity ice skating thing that was on for a fleeting moment, didn't sign it, and that was the same time that David Mason was filming Survivor. So I wouldn't have even been able to do Survivor had I done that. So to me, it's like, let the people in that did well in it and see how they go.
Well, another show too, Justin, that you were involved in. We've just had Dancing with the Stars All Stars earlier this year. That was on 2 different networks. They brought back again, so it's not unheard of for shows that have crossed different networks to bring back people. So it would be nice of Channel 10 to acknowledge that. Just quickly, one final question, and I'll acknowledge each of you, and we'll say goodbye. Justin and David, right now, Justin, clear it up to David Oldfield on the line right now. Did you break his pot?
I cannot remember. I love stirring the pot. So
And breaking it.
And breaking it. Shit. I've never been too subtle in the kitchen. I'm pretty heavy-handed with everything I do. So, yeah, mate.
David, anything to get out after 15 years about your precious pot being broken?
No, look, it's fair to say that if I was ever concerned about Justin breaking it, it was probably only for the cameras anyway. There was an element of it. I mean, let's face it, you talked about the rewards before. I mean, we had a mobile kitchen, which we won, which was really just a bench top. But, when you're cooking, you want bench space. You do need room to, and we did have like a sink. Didn't have a tap with running water, but we had a sink, and so you did come to sort of value the pots and things to a degree, just in the sense of their necessity in what you were doing. But it was all just sort of good fodder for the cameras, and I think Justin and I had some good interplay there at different times, which was probably helpful from bringing some entertainment to the audience, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I mentioned you in my book, Justin. I'm not sure I want Amber to get a copy of it because I don't remember. I don't remember mentioning Amber, but I did mention you, and I did mention Guy, and I think I mentioned Elton, and in very nice terms too, I must say, Justin. So no, look, I don't have a single hard feeling about the entire thing, except I always have. It was a learning experience for me. It was a learning experience that I can make a mistake. I've always knew I could make lots.
You didn't make a mistake, mate. You just, the numbers went against you. They didn't deserve to.
I made the mistake of underestimating people's stupidity in the face of what was logical and rational. And that in itself was a great exercise educationally for me at that point in time in my life. And I hope
it was only 100 grand's worth. Doesn't matter.
Yes, I wasn't all that fussed about it. And that not a lot of people know that.
It didn't change me. Didn't change me as a person.
No, it would have been helpful. Would have been a lot more helpful now than it was back then, to be frank.
But sometimes, in all credit, when you're hungry and you're tired and you're on the island, we're doing the best what we can with what we're given. I don't know if you're always so rational about the decision making, or how even when you're talking to the producers on the beach, you're trying to rationalize, for me, how the audience are going to see me. I mean, they only know me for whatever soaps or Home and Away or America, whatever, how they're going to rationalize how I want to be perceived. I mean, but then I'm tired and I'm backtracking. I mean, there's a lot going on when you're there. So making decisions, and maybe the girls were planning ahead. I mean, maybe
we came in fresh. We came in fresh from the resort.
Yeah, I mean,
whereas, mate, David, you think pretty well on your feet, and where with them, mate, they've been there for three and a bit weeks, and mate, you do go a bit nuts, and you watch shows like that, from the lounge room. You're going, why is that person making that decision? That is fucking ridiculous. And they're just ratchet in the head because they're starving and all the rest of it. So, I'll show them the point of it.
We know physiologically when your blood sugar's down, your brain is not going to be acting as it used to. And so exactly as Guy says, why are they making those decisions? That becomes entertainment. So
and listen, I have plenty of buffet time just quietly. I don't want the perfect.
And the women, they might be necessarily naive or stupid. They might be just hungry and making the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing. Yeah. One of the perfect things about that format is the kind of stress that people are put under, and we then sit back and watch the result of it.
Yeah, and you want people to make silly decisions at times because that's entertaining, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's why we love the show. It's why we're here talking about it. And it's why we've thoroughly enjoyed this ability to have you all sort of come on the show and have a chat. And I just I want to just quickly acknowledge a couple of people before I go around the room and thank everyone and we wrap this up. Just obviously 3 guests that we've had on the show that ultimately unfortunately weren't able to make it today in Fiona, Kim and Wayne. Time differences and situations, and really want to actually send out a special shout out to Fiona. She had a recent accident and just wanted to send some well wishes out to Fiona. Unfortunately not able to join us with that too, but obviously I want want to thank Wayne and Kim for their time in joining it. And to the 5 that ultimately we haven't had on the show, that, to acknowledge everybody who was involved in this season, of course. To Ben, I've bagged him out, but he was part of the show. I know Matt's a big Ben Wynn fan, but brought enough that we've talked about him a fair bit as well, of course, out there. To Gabby, obviously he brought a lot to the show and a lot of entertainment going out there and that as well. To Elton, maybe one of my favourites that I didn't realise I loved Elton as much when rewatching this and analysing it. It turned into a bit of a fan favourite for me. And of course, Nicole and Imogen, who just really brought something else. I stand by the fact that they're maybe the most unbreakable duo we've ever had in Australian Survivor history. They just were fantastic. Queen Imogen, I should sort of point that out there as well to make sure that I am getting the royalty credits out there for that. But obviously to everyone who wasn't able to make it today, big shout out. And to Dicko, of course. And all the production and everyone else involved in the season, David, that I'm sure you could sit here and name for the next hour. But obviously, to acknowledge everybody involved in it, Channel 7 as well. It was a lot of fun. And this isn't our final episode. Matt and I will talk about that in just a second. But just going around the room, first of all, Justin, such an honour to have you back on the show. Again, we had you on a couple of weeks ago, had an amazing interview. If you want to hear the story about how we even tracked you down, listen to that interview because it's a fun story. I've really enjoyed having you on the show and having the opportunity to talk to you off air as well. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that we've been able to get you on a couple of times now to talk about it, because you definitely made a very big impact on the season, and I still stand by the fact you are... I said at the very beginning, before I even met you, to right now, you are one of the most unique people ever in Australian Survivor history. Just your story, the truth you told us in your interview. It's just, you're a fascinating person to have played this game, and we really appreciate your time here on Australian Survivor Archives.
Well, thank you guys for taking us back when, 15 years ago. And thank you, David Mason, giving me the opportunity on the show back then. It was a fun gig.
Yeah.
And we could say a lot.
Yeah,
Could have
indeed.
been what may have
Maybe
been.
for another 3 hours, basically going over it.
Who did this? Who did that? It's donkeys now. You go forward in life, but I appreciate the little nostalgia journey you guys have done. Thanks.
You're most welcome. David Oldfield, I mean, look, let's be honest. I'm saying this, we said it to you on air, we'll say it to you right now. One of the most exciting ones, I was always looking forward to chatting with you. Matt and I are massive fanboys of yours, and probably, I think you hold the record now on Australian Survivor Archives of having the most episodes named after you, so you're welcome. But thoroughly enjoyed your interview, thoroughly enjoyed covering your time on the show and having you back here to talk about it. You're a man not afraid to obviously say it how it is, and we really sincerely hope you get this. You need to come back and play. We want to see you on Modern Survivor. I want to see you against the other Davids, the great Davids of Australian Survivor, David Haas and David Jeanette. That your name is 100% perfect with great characters in the history of all eras of Survivor. So we need to see you return one day.
Yes, well, look, as a custodial single dad, one of those things that you don't see a lot of, I must say, in the sense of having custody, as opposed to just sadly seeing them on weekends like so many single fathers have to go through. It would be very hard for me. I can't say absolutely no, because they always say you should never say never, but it would be very, very hard for me to do anything particular along those lines. But I'm grateful for what you boys have to say, and thank you very much for your kindnesses in what you've enjoyed, what I contributed, whatever that may have been. I say again, I very much enjoyed doing it. I would have backed up and gone straight back into the jungle, the following day. I have to say to David Mason, I don't know whether you remember when you first contacted me about doing the program, you told me it was the mole. And because you did, you told me it was the mole because obviously there was some secrecy around the fact that was happening at the time. So you sussed me out as to whether I was willing to do it and said that the show was going to be the mole. And I have to say, I'm so extraordinarily happy that it turned out to not be the mole and to have been Survivor. And it's been great sort of seeing you after all of these years. And I hope things are going.
It's been a while.
I hope things are going well for you, but I enjoyed it. I have no regrets. As far as I'm concerned, it worked out as it was meant to be, or as it certainly did, is how it is. And I feel, quite good about that. And it was a great time. And once again, you guys, thanks for having me, and thanks for the interview that you did with me and everything that you're doing to keep all of this alive for so many people who find it so extraordinarily interesting.
Well, thank you. And just on a personal note, David, you were robbed of the Hall of Fame this year. I'm going to keep voting for you every year until you get
didn't I get in? I didn't know.
Oh, well, the time of recording this, we haven't announced it, but spoiler alert, you don't, sadly. I would have contacted you well and truly by now to let you know. So sorry to say. Guy voted for you as well. Guys on the... And so did Matt. All three of us on the expert panel right now all voted for you, so you can't blame us.
Any win would have been so humbly
We'll get you there. I'm telling you now.
I thought you were a sure thing, David, and I only just found out just before this reunion that you didn't get in. I couldn't. I'm filthy.
Every year I'm voting for you, Dave, until you get in. I'm just spoiling that now for our Hall of Fame.
Before my death would be good. It's not one of those posthumous awards that I'd be looking for.
No, we'll make sure of that. Guy, for you again, at the time of us releasing this, literally last week was your interview airing and such a great chat, but I always admire your passion for this show 15 years later, that you still love talking about this, that you love Survivor so much and you hold this so high. You're our first winner that we've been able to talk to on Australian Survivor Archives, because obviously, sadly, Rob Dixon no longer with us. But it was an honour to chat with you then, honour to get you back in here and share extra memories and kind of get you reunited with some of the gang here and chat about, obviously, what is a very special part of your life and something that you hold very high amongst all your many achievements that you have in your life. So thank you very much.
I equally want to say thanks to Dave Mason, because for me, I was probably the fanboy of Survivor that walked onto the beach at Vanuatu more than the other competitors. And for me, I got the ultimate opportunity. I've knocked back other reality shows, so I didn't want to do them, and I wouldn't do another reality show other than Survivor if I got asked as well. So I'd love nothing more than to team up with Justin and David, who I call friends, and they've become friends since Survivor. I didn't know either of them before that, and we're the three. I'm mates with both of them, and was with Elton as well, and it was just an awesome experience. And to you guys for putting on the podcast and doing this, like what you've done for us is brought back 15 years ago memories that we've all shown that we love to death. And for me, I sort of know when Survivor was, because my youngest daughter, Phoenix, was born sort of 3 months after I came back from Survivor. So my wife, Helen, went over there when I initially got voted out, because I was on the jury, and she came over for a holiday, and she was heavily pregnant, and she's a bigger Survivor fan than I am. And so she got to live, when I went back into the show, she got to live the Survivor piece that she otherwise wouldn't get to see. And so for our family, it's a big thing. And, in our home here, which I showed you guys on the podcast the other day, I just moved into a new house and pictures are still going up on the wall. But you guys saw that Survivor frame that I've got that I was given for one of my birthdays. It's got the mask, the original mask. You guys remember that we had? It's got a knife that Ben brought in that I took from him when we put the knife into his back, and that sits there with the buff and the Survivor logo, and it sits up framed on my wall. And growing up with my kids, their friends would come into the house, and that sits up in the lounge room in pride of place. And kids walk in not knowing that I've been the World Ironman champion. They don't know all the other things that I've done. And when the kids walked in and they saw that on the wall, it was the greatest moment for my kids when their friends said, "Did your dad win Survivor?"
Fantastic.
So, and that'll stand with me for the rest of my life. So, I couldn't be happy. Yeah.
Guy, was your wife still in Vanuatu when at that final jury where you won?
Yeah. Yeah.
So was she wasn't on set?
No, but I know Dave Mason. They weren't on set. They weren't behind the scenes, were they?
I can't remember. We might have actually got everyone to set for that final tribal council, I think. Yeah, I can't remember.
What they do on Channel 10.
Yes.
No, they weren't. They were back at the resort. I remember now. Okay. I remember going back, and so no, they weren't. But she got to live the whole experience of just being at the resort and coming back, and and they were behind the scenes a bit. So it was fantastic for the whole family. Yeah, it was just an amazing moment.
Nice. Dave Mason, final thanks to you. You were, as I said, our very first guests that we had on way back. I think it was episode 2 of this season, essentially, and set the bar high, got all the stories, and we've learned a lot since. And so honoured that you're being able to join us again. I've had the pleasure now to interview you a couple of times. I did you on Off the Podium. Listen to it. Great interview talking about the Sydney Olympic bid. But I appreciate you chatting and spilling some more secrets about the show. And obviously something that, again, similar to Guy, you're very proud of 15 years later that you were a part of. And we definitely are happy to help you share these memories after all these years.
Well, thank you to you guys for pulling these memories out from all of us. I hope it's been interesting, entertaining for the audience. It's certainly been fun for me to relive a lot of this and to think about it with 15 years of hindsight and still have a lot of pride in it. I don't have pride with every TV show I've made, but I have pride with Survivor, and it's really enjoyable to relive that.
Well, we're glad
David,
we can help.
The reboot of The Mole coming.
Oh God, I'd love to do that. The Mole is the one show I would come back and do TV again for.
Get Grant back. Don't get Tom fucking Williams. Grant. Right?
No, I know. Don't tell me about it. Oh,
yeah. That's when I stopped watching. I think we talked about this. I could not stomach watching him host that show. I'm like, that is not Grant Bowler. I won't watch the new Amazing Race because it's not Grant Bowler. Yeah.
I couldn't stomach shooting it. He was foisted on me, foisted on the show.
Hashtag bring back Grant. He should be doing all the things. We're going to close this off now. Obviously, usually in an interview, we'll kind of cut it now, and Matt and I will do a wrap up. But for a reunion, we wrap it up on air right now, and I'll hand over to you, Matt, to close it out properly. But I just want to say to everybody who's been on the show, as I said, everybody that's been on this episode, thank you so much. This isn't our last episode for season 2. We've got one more to do. Matt and I will be back next week, possibly with Cable, and we'll just do our general wrap up of the season, going over everything that we haven't covered or want to kind of go over again. We'll have some listener questions to get to. We'll have a competition as well. We'll be drawing out next week to get excited. And Matt, we're also going to do that great idea that you came up with recently, where we are going to recast Celebrity Survivor 2021 style. So we're going to take every single person from the 2006 season. So we're going to find the soap star. We're going to find the modern Justin Melvey. Who would be the Justin Melvey on this season? Who would be the Nicole Dixon on this season? Who would be the controversial politician, David Oldfield style 2021? Who would be the Iron Man who loves Survivor and David and the Guy Leach? We're even going to find who would be the Ben Wynn. And no, Matt, it's not me. You can't put me on the cast, all right? That's not fair. I've got more personality than that guy. But we're looking forward to that next week to close out season 2 in style. And Matt, I'll hand it over to you to say our final farewells. I would say thanks everybody for listening, and we look forward to closing out season 2 of Celebrity Survivor next week in style.
Yeah, just quickly, guys. Just want to first off, David Mason, thanks for everything you've done with this season, mate. Like, I know it was 15 years ago. We know what a stressful time would have been, but mate, in the end, you did a great job, and it's great that we can still talk about it now. To the rest of you, for the cast, thanks for putting yourselves out there. Obviously, everyone was there for different reasons, and but at the end of the day, you all said yes, and you made for a good season of Survivor. So thanks for that, and for our listeners who have been keeping track this whole time, thanks to them for listening on, and I hope that having this little reunion, something that probably no one thought would ever happen. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of hours, and look forward to doing the wrap-up episode next week.
Perfect. Well, we'll close it out. Guy Leach, one final question. We like to close out with a song. We've done it differently this season. Last season, we just used the score and played a bit of music with it. This season, we've just chosen random songs. You are the winner of this season. I feel right now you can choose any song you want. We don't give a shit about copyright here on Australian Survivor Archive, so they can sue us eventually. Give us a song, a favourite song, a song that reminds you of 2006 maybe when you were winning this. Like, what would you like us to close out on the show?
Let's close out with Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle.
Beautiful. That is perfect. Closing off with that. We'll be back next week with the final episode for season 2 of Australian Survivor. And until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you then.